Hi, this is Craig. This is another mindfulness podcast. The theme of this one is communication. And communication is something that we all need in life. It can really help us in situations. And mindful communication, is a bit of an art. It's not easy to do mindful communication, but I shall talk you through it. And we'll also do a little meditation in this podcast. So, ordinarily, you could think of people um, as being in one of three states. They're either open to conversation, or they're closed, or they're somewhere in between. So you could sort of equate it to like a traffic light system. So people who are closed, who don't want to talk, are red, and people who want to talk and are open, they're green. The amber is kind of in between, and they can go either to red or green depending on how the conversation plays out. So, if you can imagine times where you were kind of in a conversation, but you got distracted, or you didn't really want to listen, or you had other things going on in your head that was stopping you from listening fully. Even something as simple as being hungry. Sometimes people would want to talk to you. Your mind's half on food. It's not on being present for the other person. And that's really where mindful communication comes in. It's having the presence to be and really listen to the other person. So mindful communication begins with mindful listening. It begins with giving your presence to the other person. And in order to give your presence to a really good degree, if you can be as present as you can for people, it's a real gift for people, because people can chat to you and you can listen and you're understanding and you're relating back what they're saying. We all know people who have a gift of listening, people who really understand us. So this is what we're trying to get to with mindful communication. So the very first thing is to let go of your ego. And what I mean by this is the thinking behind the communication. And there's a few clues that I'm going to go through that kind of give you an indication that you've gone into your ego. And incidentally, when you are in your ego, you're more amber, you're kind of a little bit not present, you're not as open as you were. And actually, in some cases, you can go red. So, red people who are closed to conversations, the chances are they're in their head thinking about something else and they're resisting something. Therefore, they're in their ego mind. So, here's a few examples of being in your ego. So, one of them is always kind of wanting to be right and always talking about yourself. So an example might be that you go and someone comes up to you and is saying, "Oh, I really would like to talk to you. I've had such a rubbish day today." And immediately the other person is like, "Yeah, me too. I had a terrible day as well, and I just want to talk about me, and that's me going into my ego, just wanting to talk about me." You've immediately kind of cut off the other person's conversation before it's even begun. So useful to notice if you're talking about yourself, or you're taking away the onus from listening to someone else to talking about you. That's a clue that you're in your ego, that you've gone amber. You're no longer green and present and open to the person's conversation. Always wanting to be right is kind of justifying things, and we can have really sort of strange communication sometimes, where we're even watching a movie or something, and then it reminds you of something else, and you're like, wasn't such and such in this film? And the other person's going, no, 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 he definitely wasn't in it, it was this person. And then you kind of end up sort of trying to justify your knowledge or your wisdom in things like that. There's also kind of justifying um, the need to be angry or the need to be righteous or this, this ego stuff. It's like, you know what, I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm not going to sway on that. I'm sticking to it. This kind of stubbornness, this not wanting to be flexible or open-minded enough to listen to other people's points of view, just sort of bulldozing them down in a way to sort of say, well, I'm right, and I need this anger. Righteous anger is something that comes up time and time again, and you may well be right, but the trouble is, you're not kind of being mindful of anybody else's opinion or ideas, and you're also digging your heels in a kind of righteous way, but that's just fueling an emotion within you. You're actually suffering yourself with a strong feeling, whether it's frustration or anger or something like that. So it's another clue that you're in your ego. Interrupting conversations, that's a classic ego trait. Someone's talking and you're getting bored, or you're like just wanting the conversation to end, so you interrupt. That's thinking about yourself again. You're not wanting the conversation, or you're feeling like the conversation is over, or da 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 da. So again, it's another clue. Not listening or being present. You might be on your mobile phone or watching TV or something, and someone's trying to talk to you in those situations. You're kind of half focused on your TV or your phone. There's many people who try and talk to people who are on their Facebook or whatever, and the other person makes a pretense of listening. Yes, I'm hearing you, but they're kind of half not hearing you. They're not fully present, as in mindfulness. They're distracted and they're filling their head with other stuff, whatever they're watching or reading. So that's another clue that there's ego involved. If someone's ill or feeling a bit heavy, tired or physically not that great, or as I say, if they're hungry or thirsty or they've got a need, they're not going to be present for a conversation either. And obviously, if you're feeling heavy and drained and you're trying to sort of receive a conversation, it's really hard to listen in those situations because, again, you've got things going on for you that you need to resolve. This ego is there to show you that there's something that's out of balance, that you're not being mindful, there's something that's bothering you. And your body is really good at giving you signals. I've got another podcast on body scanning, which is talks about the body's signals a bit more. Another ego trait is kind of offering advice when it's not required, or trying to fix someone's problems. And sometimes you have to use your wisdom, your discernment to know that that's a good thing to do. So if someone's green and you're chatting, if you're both green and you're open to conversations and ideas and things like that, you're more receptive of ideas and solutions. So in those kind of situations, it's not too bad. Or if someone actually asks for your help, then also, of course you can, in those situations, give advice. But sometimes people just want to download what's going on for them. Some people might say, I've had a really rubbish day. Such a busy day at work today. And if someone just then goes, oh, I'll run you a bath and you'll be fine, or it's like, oh, maybe, I'm hearing that you've not enjoyed your job for the last few days or whatever. Maybe you should start looking for another job, or da 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 da. People are starting to offer advice. No matter how well intentioned, it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And maybe you'll have noticed times when you've had advice given to you that you didn't really want. All you wanted was them to understand where you're coming from and how you're feeling. That's empathy. So the kind of rule is, in some ways, is noticing if someone's green or if they're amber. If they're red, they're definitely not wanting advice. If they're really tired and stressed and they've had a terrible day at work, then all you can do really is listen and offer your presence and try and reflect back what the person is saying. So the person is like, I'm having a terrible day. You kind of respond, you're like, oh, you've had a bad day, I'm here for you. I'm wanting to listen. So yeah, so be aware of trying to fix people. We can't actually fix other people. And if you're trying to, that's another ego trait. You're trying to manipulate people for your own ends in some ways. There's a fear behind that, and I talk about that in my open heart intentions podcast. So, and yes, if you're in communication with someone and there's complaining and gossiping and criticism going on and there's judging going on, then that's not mindful communication either. It's we're leaving the present moment to identify a situation as bad or hopeless or this person is awful or whatever it is. And that's again highlighting there's a feeling behind the speech. There's an emotion sitting there, anxiety, anger, frustration. And that's what we need to focus on. We need to calm ourselves down and get away from our frustrations, be with the frustrations with kindness, not fueling it with more gossip and criticism. You're just fueling your ego to keep reappearing and keeping you away from your presence and your mindful practice and your kindness and all these lovely things that we get when we're more mindful. So there's a few clues there. That's not all of them, but you can see straight away how quickly you can go into your ego mind during a conversation and lose your listening. So it's a practice to try and mindfully listen. And it's good to begin with a conversation with a kind of gratitude in a way of like being grateful that someone actually wants to talk to you. Because most of the time when people do want to talk, it is because there's something going on for them. There is an issue that they want to share or resolve. So it's actually really lovely to just be present and be listening and have that gratitude. It's like, wow, okay, someone wants to talk to me about their stuff. This is good. I'll be here for that person. They can obviously think that I can listen, and that's really lovely. So having a gratitude is a good start to letting go of your ego. It might knock you from amber to green on the scale. And then as the person starts to speak, we're practicing our mindfulness, so we're mindfully breathing, just to ground ourselves. We're not distracting from the what people are saying. We want to listen. So we're breathing, and we're noticing how we're feeling, and we're seeing if we can notice how the other person's feeling too. This is a kind of ongoing process, but yeah, you breathe just to ground yourself, and then you listen, and that's all you do. You mindfully listen to the other person. And occasionally you reflect back with empathy what the person is saying. You're observing the facts in your own words. So someone says, I'll give you an example. I've had a nightmare of a day. So you would say, oh, you've had a really tough day. You've kind of, reflected it back in your own words. And they're like, yeah, I had a really rubbish day today. My boss was rude to me. And so you're like, oh my gosh, your boss was rude to you. So again, you've repeated, you're not adding anything like, oh yes, I never liked him, or do you know what I mean? So you're just reflecting it back. And then the person is like digging deeper themselves, into this thing. They're like, yeah, and it's really unusual for him to be rude. He's not normally like that. And then you reply, it's kind of like, oh yeah, it was out of character. And you're like, yeah, it was. Maybe he's just having a tough day as well. And So you can see that the conversation can expand and explore, but the person doing the talking kind of does the exploring. Obviously, you can ask questions if it's not seeming to be obvious what the person is talking about. But the, the rule of thumb really is to try and be present and listen and offer empathic responses. Just reflect back what the person is saying, not judging anything, not judging the situation, even if you think that, you have these thought processes, your ego in the back of your head kind of laughing quietly, going, this person's got it all wrong, or I know exactly what could solve this person's problem, but often those things aren't what the person needs in that moment. It's maybe something that you can go to later. But for now, you're practicing mindful listening, you're mindfully breathing, and you're present for the person 100%. I often call this the Zen warrior approach because it's a real art and it's a real challenge to just sit with your presence. Some people you'll be able to do a bit more easier than some. There'll be other people who, you're in maybe a habitual pattern with these people. I can think of family members because you've known them all your life. There's always a joke about, how Zen are you? It's like, well, visit your family and stay with them for a week and see how you get on. And that's true to a certain way because we have kind of habitual subconscious responses to certain people because we're familiar with them. But even then, you can practice changing your behavior, rather than responding in a way you've always responded. You're becoming more mindful. So you're like, I'm not just going to talk this person down because that's what I always do, or I never agree with this person. And why do I never agree with this person? It's because they're, and you find you're in your ego judging that person. It's kind of like, right, let's start again with this person. Let me just listen. Let me breathe and let me listen to what they've got to say and try and reflect back in my own words what it is they're saying. You find if you can do that, you get somewhere further, you get somewhere different with people. And the Zen warrior kind of mantra, if you like, is how do I give to ease suffering in this situation? Because most of the time, mindful communication, people who want to talk to you are suffering in some way. They have an issue or they're bothered by something, or it's very rare for people just to kind of want to chat to you without any kind of thing beneath. Otherwise, a lot of us would be sitting quite happily, smiling. We might be having a casual conversation of how lovely something is. But an actual kind of, one-to-one with someone, most of the time someone's wanting to offload something. So there's suffering behind somewhere. So how do you give to ease suffering? And every conversation that you go into, that is prominent in your mind if you're a mindful practitioner. It's kind of like, right, how do I give? How can I be the most compassionate, caring person in this moment? Because actually this person in front of me is the most important person right now, because in this moment they are the only person right now, and I have no idea what's going to happen in another hour or tomorrow or whatever. So and maybe I won't see this person for a while, or I want it to be good. I want this to be a really good conversation, so I want to give to ease suffering. So it's holding the space for someone, it's listening, it's breathing, it's noticing when someone says something and it puts you into your ego and you start going, oh, that's not right in your head, or I need to interrupt this, or I'm not liking this, or da 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 da, and trying to come out of that and come back to your breathing. Because actually, what you think at that moment is not important, that can come out later. What's important is being in the moment with your presence and really listening to that other person. They will feel heard, they will feel held. You're being selfless by not thinking about yourself. You're trying to be gentle with this person. and you're trying to get that person to come to some sort of resolution within themselves about their issue, because everyone has an inherent wisdom and knows really what's good for them. What would be the best choice, the right action to move forward. But sometimes people need to, seek advice or chew it off someone else. So smile, try and be gentle, try and nurture gifts in the other person. It's okay to compliment other people, or be kind. If someone's having a really tough time, you can offer. It's like, oh, I'm really noticing that you're doing a good job here, or you're doing the best you can. But it's good to notice what you say and what impact that has on the other person. You have to be mindful for that too, because you might say a compliment. You might go, I think you're doing pretty well under the circumstances, and the other person maybe hasn't received that compliment or hasn't even heard it, and they're just like, oh, it's I'm just doing what I need to do, but I'm still struggling with X. So if they're still struggling with X, then you need to then focus on that. And it's like, oh, you're still struggling with X. Try and get them to talk about their issues. So I've really kind of glossed very loosely and very quickly over mindful listening here, and mindful communication. It's bigger than this. Podcasts can give you. In fact, whole workshops can be done around it. But the rule is to try and have your presence, your listening skills, your awareness there, noticing that if you say something, if the other person then changes from green to amber, it's because you maybe said something that's rattled them. All of this stuff is what you need to become more mindful in your communication. And I guarantee that if you do that, you will start improving your relationships with other people by giving them a space to talk. You're easing their suffering straight away. You'll get to different places with that person. And so it's a really important practice, this listening. So just to finish, I'm going to do a meditation. And so I would invite you just to relax where you are, just sit in your chair, have your eyes closed. I'll hit my little bell to begin. So just relax. And here we go. So just begin by noticing your breath. Just notice your in-breath and your out-breath. And really feel the air as you breathe in. And feel the air as you breathe out. Breathing in, you know you're breathing in. Breathing out, you know you're breathing out. And notice if your mind wanders away from your breath. And if it does, just gently bring your focus back to your breath. Breathing in calmly, breathing out easily. And just expand your awareness out, just to listen, just to notice any sounds. Just sink into the quietness and stillness, just letting each sound come and go. And then again, just return your awareness to your breathing. And as you breathe in, just breathe in some kindness to yourself. Just knowing that taking this time to just be is healing, giving your mind a chance to settle and not judge anything. And every time you do this, you increase your kindness and your compassion for yourself, and in so doing for others. You're holding the space for yourself when you meditate. Breathing in kindness, breathing out compassion. So just take another few conscious breaths. Then just when you're ready, just open your eyes, come back to where you are. Okay, so that was just a few minutes just to ground ourselves and give ourselves a kind of blast of self-compassion and kindness. And it's very important in communication not to beat yourself up, because again, that's ego. So if you have said something that hasn't gone down very well, or you have shouted at someone, then that's completely fine. It's all part of our practice. We just think, oh, okay, I wasn't very skillful, I wasn't very mindful in that situation. Let's see if I can practice again the next time. But you let go. You don't beat yourself up over it. We're only human. It's going to be quite hard, especially as a beginner, to notice when people are green or when people are red, and notice when you've said something and they've gone from green to being open to you to suddenly closing down because what you said has annoyed them. This is all part of the practice. So keep giving yourself kindness and love, and that will boost you into situations with other people. And don't worry as well if there are people who you just can't listen to or you can't sit with, or you'd rather not, because they feel toxic to you, or they feel really, you really struggle. It's good to notice if we struggle with certain people, because then we can go away and we can breathe and we can meditate on this and we can find our peace, and we can try and practice loving kindness to these people. And there are Compassion for Others podcast in this series as well that gives a bit more detail onto that. But we try and send kindness and ease their suffering from a remote place. And then you may find that you might be able to sit with a person, but it's all a practice. It's all being gentle and being curious about how conversations go. If you practice your listening and your being and reflect back what the person said, if you do those three things, then you're on your way to becoming a mindful communicator. So take your time with it. It's not an easy practice, but it is a really important practice. I can just imagine a world of mindful communicators who, listen to other people, respect other people's points of views. They don't have to agree, but they're having a nice discussion. They're not going red. Um, the world would change if everyone was like that. So, thank you for listening. That's this podcast, and hopefully you'll got something out of it, and hopefully you'll hear me soon on another one. So, thank you.